Hello, my name is Jock and welcome to Jocy Productions. Today we're going to cover the concept of European colonization of the Americas. Back in 1894, when Abraham Lincoln founded the Virginia colony, he was broke. So the Virginia colony didn't flourish until about 1776, about 30 years after the original founding. It didn't become some sort of royal, amazing colony. It actually was just taken over by the Indians, and they ran a pretty tight shift. And see, these Indians that took over Jamestown in 1994, they gave Abraham Lincoln a deal. They told him, if you let us take over Jamestown, we will give you all the vampires. Because at this time, Abraham Lincoln was very into vampire slaying, a popular hobby at the time. Abraham Lincoln, he was so torn between his town, fighting for his town, and he really wanted those vampires at the same time. He decided to go with fighting for his Jamestown. So he took all of the colony's best, strongest men, and they all went and fought the Indians for Jamestown. Now, while this was happening, you gotta understand that the vampires were actually on the Indian sides. So while the colonists, with of course led by Abraham Lincoln, were fighting these Indians, the vampires would just come out of nowhere, you know, because they could just be bats for a little bit. They'd become vampires like right behind the colonists, and they would stab their necks with their teeth. And the colonists then became vampires, and then that was when Abraham Lincoln finally got his revenge. The whole vampire thing, it's quite complicated, but essentially Abraham Lincoln and his colonists won over that battle with the vampires and the Indians. See, they call that one the Valkyrie battle for Jamestown. That one's not taught as much, but it's going to be very important. It will probably be on the AP tests. And what you got to understand with this is that Charles II, the current king of Spain, who was the one who mandated Jamestown in the first place, or gave the charter for it, is what the fancy words they used to call for it. Charles II, he really liked vampires. So when he saw that Abraham Lincoln had killed all the vampires and the Indians, Charles II, this made him very upset. And Charles, he actually took a whole army of ships, tanks. I think they had a few airplanes. This was about 2002. Charles II took that whole army to the colonists at the time, to Jamestown, which was the only colony back in 2005. And they just attacked, you know, they killed so many colonists, and they ended up cutting Abraham Lincoln's head off, but, you know, obviously preserving it because he's still alive today. And they, you know, they killed vampires by accident, even though Charles II loved vampires, and they messed up Jamestown completely. And while Charles II and his army were there, they decided, hey, we really like this new world, and screw Spain or England or wherever they were before. It doesn't really matter. They decided, let's stay in this new world and colonize this. But what you got to understand is that Charles II had a brother back in England who was ruling England at the time, and he did not like Charles II. He said, I will not let Charles II have the New World all to himself. So the brother, whose name was Charles III, he was a little bit younger than Charles II. Charles III comes over to the Americas and the colonies, and he kills all of the army, all of the armada and the tanks and the airplanes and the vampires that Charles II had brought over to kill Abraham Lincoln. He just completely demolishes all of them, brings Abraham Lincoln's head back to life. That's why we have it in the jar. Completely recolonizes all of America with him and Abraham Lincoln's head, and that's how we got to America today. The next video will be about the American Revolution, when Abraham Lincoln's head has a fallout with Charles III, and Charles II gets resurrected from the dead. It's a pretty exciting one, so stay tuned for Chapter 2. Thank you. This was Jocy Productions. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. If you really enjoyed, make sure to leave a subscribe, or stay a subscribe.